Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Across the Pitch with myself, Dave Miller, and Mike Barrera, just to my left or right. I'm not gonna.
We always mess that up.
Yeah. I mean, again, obviously, we're here today. We're just here for a quick pre-recorded podcast. This will come out Friday evening, I believe.
Yep.
At some point, it's just a bit of a casual one. We're going to look at the news that has come out since Sunday's pod. With the signing of Richard Odada and the news of Haris Medunjanin, obviously one of the Philadelphia Union favourites that played a big role, in the Union's history in the MLS. Obviously, he played for a few years with the team. It appears to be returning back to Europe, and he obviously will actually be playing the final game this weekend against the Union. So I guess it's sort of like a testimonial for him in the MLS, which I'm sure it will be a fantastic atmosphere to play, and I'm sure both sides will give him a great, rousing reception. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's a shame to see a player like Harris go, but obviously when family's obviously the more important thing when it comes between the game and that. So I mean, obviously it's good to see that he's got the option, he's got the move to go back home to be close to his family and in his later years in his career.
Yeah, it is like full circle for him to finish off his career against the Union. He's certainly a player that's still beloved by the Philadelphia fan base. Every time he comes to town, or every time we hear his name being mentioned, he's mentioned as one of the better Union players we've had over the past 12 years of existence. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a sad day, but he is obviously 37 years old. He's getting older. His career's coming to an end, as all players do eventually. So it's good he goes back to his to closer to home and can finish off his career where he wants to, of course, on his terms. But it's unfortunate that they're not playing in Philadelphia this coming weekend, because that would have really been a nice send off to him overall. At least one more, one last goodbye for the Philadelphia fans. But he feels like he's been gone for so long. It's only been a matter of a few years, but it's certainly someone that the Union could use even to today's in today's system. He's just a great passer, great player, and even a better person.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you said, he's been a fantastic player for the Union the 3 years he was there, and again, a fantastic person as well. And I mean, it's gonna be a shame to see. I mean, again, he's been in the MLS for 5 years now,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be a shame to see a player of his caliber go. I mean, again, he's a long-term Bosnian international. Again, as we sort of spoke about, I think you've alluded to multiple times. He had the best left-footed Union players ever had since before the emergence of Jack McNibb. So again, his impact on the team won't be forgotten. I think again you sort of see that's one of the good things about the Union, well, great things about the Union and the fan base is the fact that they don't forget players easily. I mean, even some of the more unsung heroes, their names are their names stick amongst the fan base for years to come. So I mean, like years following when they've been on the team. So it's a shame to see a player of his caliber leave. Getting on in his getting on later in his career, so he's not near the standard he was again 3, 4, 5 years ago. But yeah, it's a shame to see. It's a shame to see him go, but it's great that he's able to go back home, be close to his family.
Yeah, and you think when you mention the fans' connection with these players, you have somebody like Kasper Shabilko who really didn't connect to the fans the same way someone like Stewart did, or Ali
Yeah,
Bedoya. They didn't have that chemistry with the fans. Maybe like casually in some ways, but it just didn't have that overall bond that you felt, and you didn't have the love for him as much as we do with Harris and other players. So it's certainly a franchise and a fan base that, yes, you go out there and you perform well and you put up some numbers. That's great, but the Union faithful and Philadelphia in general. This isn't just the Union. This is also Eagles fans and Sixers
yeah,
fans with Allen Iverson, or players like Hugh Douglas, or whoever else, like other great players we can think of. They connected with the fans. They reached out. They became one of the part of that culture, part of that franchise, and that's why they're still beloved years later. That's why when Allen Iverson walks to a building, he is the man of the hour every single time he goes there. It's the same thing for players like Bedoya. Will be the same exact way when Bedoya
yeah,
retires, or Andre Blake. They're going to walk into Chester and Super Park, and it's going to be all eyes on them again, just as if they were playing. So I know Harris, although not the same level as Andre Blake and Bedoya, again, as you and I have now mentioned, has a nice place in the Union hearts for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And before we, dive too far into the show. I mean, again, we got a little bit more to discuss.
Yep.
Mike, I don't know if you want to dive into the ad reads
Yes, I will. Of course, we have
because
to get these
we
out.
need to get paid.
We gotta get these things out of the way. Let me get. Oh, my mouse. Hold on, it's not plugged in. There we go. Okay, we got Manscaped, 20% off plus free shipping with the code AATBirds at Manscaped.com. We have OddsJam, the number one software platform for sportsbook bandits. They use an arbitrage calculator and more, so you never lose bet again. Sign up today at OddsJam.com. Following that, we have Statement Games. Check out StatementGames.com for a fun new way to fantasy sports and entertainment. You win gift cards and prizes completely free to sign up today at StatementGames.com. Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant in Allentown, PA, serving Italian cuisine, including pizza, pasta, burger, sandwiches, and more, available for pickup or delivery. Order today at vinnyspizzapa.com. And last but not least, we have the Across the Pitch gear at the aatsportsnetwork.com/shop. They have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, decals, other cool stuff. And I know Johnny's always pumping out new materials and new images to
Yeah,
put out there on the regular. So that is our sponsor reads for tonight.
exactly. And now we can move on to the other big news of today, which is probably more exciting to Union fans than the Haris Medunjanin news, is the fact that they have signed a new player. Of course, the player we're discussing is Richard Odada. The Kenyan international signed quite literally today, Tuesday afternoon, I believe around midday in US Eastern Time. He signed a 2.5 year deal with a club option for a club option 2 other years for an undisclosed transfer fee, and he will be taking up a designated player spot, presuming he gets the international clearance and the visa confirmation and everything along those lines as well. But yeah, I mean, again, he's a player that he's very young, 21 years old. He's I think that the word. I mean, again, he's inexperienced, but he's played games as well. I mean, he's had experience, but he's not 150, 200 games into his career yet. It's a strong signing, I'd say. I think it's a signing that Union fans can't be too. He's a young player that Ernest Times truly believes has a lot of potential. Mike, obviously, what do you make of the signing?
As I'm saying this and going to read, tell you my thoughts and everything, I'm actually going to read you a quote that I saw earlier today regarding this. And if I can find it real quick, I will just read it off real fast. Let me see here. Oh, no, I don't have it. But either way, I'll get to it. I'll get to it in a minute and find this for you guys. But when I think about this sign and this deal, I think of the future of Philadelphia and what this franchise is going to look like in a couple of years. As we've talked over the past, year and a half, players like Kai Wagner, Jose Martinez, these are players that we expect to be gone within the next calendar year, right? Next 12 months, 6 months. Oh, I found the quote. Here we go. This is from Jacob Mali, the Harambee coach. He says, I've never seen such a midfielder in Africa for a long time, and for sure he is one player who I believe will make it into the top leagues in Europe. He won the midfield battle. He was accurate in his passing. He had the hunger, and that is what we were looking for as a team. So, I mean, that's a pretty high praise that came out from Paul Catrino. He does for stuff for a brotherly game. So just a quote about him from a name that obviously knows him well, but we have to plan for the future. And you think of the local. Let's look at the Union compared to the local teams, right? Dave, you're a big Eagles fan. They go
Yeah,
ahead and they win the Super Bowl. What did they do the next year or 2 years? They didn't really get younger. They kind of just kept the old heads. They put some band-aids on there. They didn't really prime themselves for the future. You can argue the
no,
same thing with the Phillies. Entering the 2012 season, they were kind of getting older. The farm system was pretty depleted. You can go look at all these teams, all these franchises, and see what they've done wrong. Now, I'll take a step back and say as well, Ernest Tanner has brought in a few players such as Davo, you know, uh, Jesus Bueno, who haven't really panned out.
on
But
pitch.
yeah, exactly. But I would argue that this player in particular has a higher potential ceiling than the rest of them they've been that he's been brought into the franchise. And like you mentioned, he has some experience. He has 5 national caps for the Kenyan team. Very impressive for somebody that age. And he does seem to fit the mold of someone who we would want to replace Jose Martinez. Now, yes, you have Leon Flock, of course, but the more depth, the better, as we've seen so far.
Yeah,
And as we've also seen, as I just mentioned, these players that Tanner has brought in have not always been a guarantee of late.
Yeah,
As a whole, yes. Of late, no. So I'm very excited. I think he could be a great fit for this club, and I do believe that Tanner wants a player at the six that is more similar to Martinez in the sense that he has an offensive attack that will benefit the franchise as Jose has currently this year and the past
yeah.
years compared to Flock, who is much more of a defensive minded player.
I think as well. I mean, again, like, if you look at the experience, as you mentioned, he's played for
Yeah.
the Kenyan national team. But again, he's played at a good standard of football. He's been playing in Serbia, which in Europe, again, it's one of the more Eastern European leagues. But again, it's a good standard. I mean, you get some
Yeah.
good. There are some good Serbian teams out there. And again, he was on the books of Red Star Belgrade, which are pretty much the top team. They are the gold standard of Serbian football. They regularly win that league every single year. So again, I mean, he's only played 2 games for them, but clearly they saw enough potential in him to bring him over from Kenya
Hmm.
to actually have them on their books. Again, it seems like an exciting pickup for now, and
Yeah.
I think at the moment, from the looks of it, again, as you mentioned, Jesus Bueno, I don't know if this is an indication that that experiment might be ending, or Bueno is a lot further off or further away than anticipated him being. But yeah, I think at the moment, Odada could very much just be a Union 2 signing, just playing in the Union 2 just to get acclimatized to the MLS before he actually goes up into the first team. But again, I think if you listen to what Ernest Tanner said in his, like when discussing the signings, basically just he really did highlight the versatility of the player. So it's not just he can play in the field; he can play at centre back as well, and he's a very quick, athletic player. So I think again that has played a big role in the signing as well as the fact that he's not just restricted to one position. He can fit in. He can fill in at the centre back position or in the 8 for the Union if he's needed as well. So I think it's a signing that obviously is looking ahead towards the future, but again, it's a one that can plug and play in different holes as well, sort of similar to the likes of Leon Fluck and Jack Elliott. What we've seen them do different roles in the past as well.
Exactly. So I think you have to also think about the versatility of a lot of the players that we have on this roster, as well as the Union Two. And for those who don't really follow the Union Two, a lot of the players such as Nathan Harriel, Quinn Sullivan, Paxton Aronson, Brandon Craig, Cole Turner, all these players who are on the first team, either on the reserves or playing, are pretty frequently active on the Union Two. I mean, Nathan
Yeah,
Harriel had the game-winning assist for the Union 2 just a couple days ago, which was a
yeah,
beautiful goal, by the way. I think by Stefanovic or however you pronounce his name. I can't think of it right now. Excuse me, but um, Tanner likes versatility. Jim Curtin likes versatility. We've seen it from a lot of our players who are able to play multiple positions. But there's a saying where iron sharpens iron.
yeah,
You want your farm system to be strong and you want competition. And just like draft picks, I know you and I talked to Chip the other day, right?
yeah,
Draft picks don't mean anything to the Union, but what does mean something to the Union is their academy, their second team, their first team. These players on these rosters are their draft picks, so to speak. And you're not going to hit on every single one of them, right? Or you could argue Cole Turner, excuse me, is one of those players that really hasn't panned out. But
no,
having this constant depth and this constant competition, like players like Darbo or Sorensen or all these amazing prospects that we have, iron sharpens iron. And you want somebody of this magnitude, of this talent, come in and say, "Hey guys, listen, I'm here to now take a roster spot from one of you." And that will only hopefully increase the play of players like Bueno or
yeah,
Cole Turner, just the same way we saw with Nathan Harriel and Olivier Mambizo. We thought Olivier was done. He's come back now with a vengeance, and Curtin trusts him again to be on this starting lineup for a more offensive-minded attack. So I love that Tanner is not satisfied with the farm system we have in place. He wants to
yeah.
continue to grow it, which is great.
I think again in some situations, as we have mentioned before as well, like uh, Jose as well. I think it's not just looking ahead. I think in some sort of situations you can't just sit there and rely on the academy to produce the players that you need.
Yeah.
Um, so again, you need to be proactive. You need to go out in the transfer window and look at players that won't only just come in and play either a squad role or a bench role or a starting role. Players that will you look to have towards the future. I think Odada is exactly that sort of signing. Um, but again, I think he is signed. He has been signed with the view to the future that okay, Jose will be sold soon. So again, he's going to be a player that we can use in the Union too, a player that we can take advantage with and actually develop and bring on without having the pressure of having to force him into the team early or making up the numbers. So I think that is potentially something that has hurt Sergio as Jose Spinal, sorry.
Yeah.
Because again, I think he came in with a lot of expectation after the permanent signing of okay, he's going to play a weekend, or he's going to fill in quite often for Jose or Leon, whoever. And he hasn't done that. He's barely played at all. I think he made his first appearance at the weekend.
Yeah, he played a couple minutes the other day. Thought he was a little. I wouldn't say jittery, but he certainly seemed like kind of excited to be out there. I know he had one turnover, which he actually made up for very nicely with the turnover himself. He kind of
Yeah,
forced the ball back, but Bueno really hasn't seen a lot. I don't watch Union Two games nearly enough as I should, considering I covered the team. I just don't have
yeah,
time to. Um, but I have heard from fans who do watch the Union Two that he's not necessarily blowing anybody away. He's just an average player overall. So and also, Dave, you're talking about the future and Jose Martinez. We had to think about Bedoya's contract's up this year.
yeah,
Jack McGlynn is now the hottest prospect in the entire nation. Leon Flock is getting attention. You have players, Quinn Sullivan, Pax Aronson. Your midfield, as crowded as it is also very much a hot topic across the
yeah,
entire globe of soccer. Where's McGlynn going to go to? Is Bedoya going to come back next year? Jose Martinez is going to go. You have a good discussion for every single one of your players on this roster, including Daniel Gazdag.
yeah,
You have to be prepared for the absolute worst. And I think this is what Tanner's doing is having a stockpile of talent. So that way, when that right price comes for Kai Wagner or Jose Martinez, he has the next person ready to fill in that role.
yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, I think, as you said, there are the question marks around the likes of Bedoya and Jose Martinez going not
Yeah.
just in this summer, but at the end of the season as well. I think again, it's you don't know what Bedoya is going to be doing in the end of the season. I think it's unlikely that he would retire. I think he
No.
probably will stick around for another year,
Yeah.
maybe even two. Um, but yeah, I think again, you never know in the game of football. You never know what's going to happen. Again, Odada is obviously, as we've seen, he's quite inexperienced still. He's played some games at a good level, still inexperienced. So there's going to be that room for growth.
Yeah.
I don't expect him to come straight into this team straight away. I could probably imagine he'll probably train for a few weeks, get acclimatized once everything's gone through. Probably fill in with the Union too and get game time there. Hopefully alongside Jesus Bueno and see them get some minutes together. But yeah, I think it's definitely a look towards the future. And I think, again, as we discussed Jose Martinez, he was a similar. Again, we could compare him to Jesus Bueno in the sense that when Jose really signed, he barely even played when he came into the team. He really struggled to make a break into the Union sort of lineup. And he sort of, I think it was the LAFC game, which was
Yep.
the final game before the
See.
before that COVID shut everything down globally, where he actually came in and made a name for himself, and he really
Yeah.
shone in that game. But you look at then you sort of fast forward a little bit, and you look towards uh, just a few months later in the MLS Back Cup, which is when not only sports sort of started to return, but the MLS sort of stood alone by itself in terms of a global sense, where the whole world would stop. The MLS was played at accessible times globally. Everyone was able to watch it. It was available like globally as well. And the MLS
Yeah.
Back Cup was a moment not just for Jose to shine, but for the Union to shine itself. And I think that's such a obviously if we're going to look back at the MLS Back Cup and just sort of the impact it's had on the Union before we close out the podcast, because not only did it help form the word here, not only did it sort of help set up the Union for the success they had since that sort of tournament and the success they've had over the last couple of years, I think it helped create players and fan favourites. I think you look at
Yeah.
again Jose Martinez. I believe he played in practically most of the games in that tournament, having only played once beforehand or started one game beforehand against LAFC. Um, Again, like for you, what were your sort of lasting memories in that tournament? Because again, I think it was one that unfortunately ended in disappointment. But I mean,
It did. No, I think that's a great point. But also, if you had told me in 2016 or 17 that you'd have one of your Union players playing for Leeds, and you'd have prospects playing for the U.S. Youth National Team and playing well. If you told us players like Mika Ua and Gazdag and Carranza would have a combined 27 goals, and the
yeah,
defense would be elite. I mean, if you told any one of us from the 2010 era on to now, maybe like 2017, 2016, if this was possible, we'd all laugh in your face and tell you to, go hop off some medication that you're on because clearly you're crazy, right? I mean, there's no
Yeah,
shot that this could be our franchise. And I think the MLS's back tournament, for one, was something that we craved. We craved sports again, right? We craved having the thrill of sports.
yeah,
But to watch your team, who you have not seen play, or just any in general play, to perform so well and pull off these great wins and make it to the semis was awesome. And you felt for the first time that you had a bright future, which obviously they did. They won the Supporter Shield. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. This year, they're being compared to the San Antonio Spurs as terms of the franchise that builds, from within and develops these players and have these core team values and all that stuff. I mean, to see where this team has gotten to over 3 years in terms of notoriety, the talent they've brought in, the coaching, and Curtin's gotten better too. I mean,
yeah,
that tournament, MLS's back tournament, was that first domino to fall in what would be a very successful couple of years.
yeah,
Which, again, you look, and then also the players. You look at the transition of players and how these players have grown and developed, and now the depth that you have now. It's remarkable what has happened over the matter of 2.5 years. Really, it hasn't been that long. It really
no.
hasn't.
But I think again, as we mentioned again, it hasn't been that long, but again, it was as you said, sort of the first time we were able to see teams back, and before that, the Union were in that playoff hunt, they were in the third, fourth, fifth seed sort of conversation. But
Mhm.
this was not only the first time that this was sort of the first time that the MLS in general had gotten a proper global or
Oh yeah,
sort of national exposure like in itself because it stood alone for a while. I mean, the NBA going into the bubble didn't come back until practically the end of the tournament. Really, there
yeah,
was a couple of like playing games beforehand, but the actual MLS, the actual NBA didn't start until after the tournament finished. Baseball didn't really clash with it. Baseball sort of was played at different times, but again, like, every single game is accessible in countries like the UK, which
mhm,
was so fantastic because again, you sort of see the MLS at times, and you only get like a selection of games unless you want to watch on the gambling app, and sometimes it is difficult to focus
yeah,
watching like on the gambling app over here because it doesn't. You don't have any commentary. You don't really know the players. You don't know what's going on. Every game is accessible for free. You could watch every game is accessible on like Sporting TV. You could watch every single Union game, which is what I did. And again, I'd always followed the Union for a few years. I'd watch the games when I could, but again, they're playing mostly at like 12 o'clock in the week and
right,
half 12, 1 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday, and things such as that. And it was difficult. It's always difficult to keep a track on. So again, during COVID, you were able to sit down and actually watch the tournament and focus upon it. And that was sort of the first time that I really like consistently watched Union play. And again, I loved it watching. I loved watching it. It was fantastic to see them playing so well. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think also what makes the Union enjoyable to watch is their culture and the team ball that they play. Um, a lot of for people who follow on Twitter and kind of been seeing the hype of the Union lately, the comparison that's going around right now is the Union, or San Antonio Spurs of the league right now, while LAFC is the LeBron James Miami Heat. You have one team that is packed with talent, unbelievable talent from top to bottom. They could just kick everybody's butt. And you have the Union, who is a team, as Coach Curtin has talked about. For us to succeed, all 11 players have to sacrifice. All 11 players have to play their hardest. That is how the Union win. And as you saw against Houston, every player made an impact. Every player kicked butt from top to bottom. Um, and it's remarkable, and I think people really do enjoy watching that team ball rather than the glorified celebrities and all stars play. They enjoy watching the purity of the game, which
yeah,
can be boring sometimes. I get it. The San Antonio Spurs, for as successful as they were not the most fun team to watch, but
no,
they took care of the fundamentals. They did everything the right way. Players like Tim Duncan and Manu and Parker, they were flashy at times, but at the same time, they were also very much fundamentally based. Whereas LeBron's throwing alley oops at Dwayne Wade, and you have all these. Ray Allen is obviously a big name, so to have the comparison to a team like the Spurs, a franchise like the Spurs, is very high praise, and I think people do enjoy watching that, especially around here in Philly, where you have that toughness, that mentality, that team building, that camaraderie is very important for us. We don't want a celebrity based flashy team. We want a team that fights for you and bleeds
Yeah,
for you and that stuff. And currently led by Alejandro Bedoya, that's what we have. We have that well led, gritty team, which we all have fallen in love with.
yeah, exactly. I think again it was the kickstart. As you said, it's always great. It's a team that exemplifies Philadelphia as a hard, gritty team. It gets down to the nitty gritty. It gets down to business. It doesn't. They again it's the perfect sort of Philadelphia city. Philadelphia's a tough, hard-working, grinding city that isn't always the prettiest when it does stuff, but it will do stuff. It will be successful. And again, the Union exemplify that, and it's a team that perfectly, represents the city. But again, looking back at them, that's back tournament as well. It also put some other players on the map that perhaps hadn't done as much as well. Do you know what I mean? Again, I think you look back at the past as well, and some of the Open Cup runs that the Union had been on and got to a couple of finals and lost. But again, this is probably one of the only real times that we'd seen the Union, compete in the recent years, heading up into this sort of run under Jim Curtin, actually, go toe to toe, head to head with some of the best teams in the MLS, and actually competing with some of these better teams, and actually going and getting results against them. So again, they brought in Sergio in 2019. Again, COVID sort of cut everything short,
Yeah.
and obviously he came back into the MLS's back cup, and he scored pretty much in every single game in the knockout
Yeah.
round.
Played well.
He helped essentially his goals fired the Union through into the semi-finals, really, in the knockouts. He sort of became sort of a hero in that sort of period, and he followed that form on into the MLS following season and helped the team actually secure the Support Shield, because I believe he was the top goal scorer of the year. The Union won the actual Support Shield. And
Think so. I forget now. I got to look that up. Yeah, but he was a big contributor, as you said.
yeah,
He was obviously played an important role, and also that this was the start of when Tanner began to really get the trust of Philadelphia,
yeah,
because the players he was bringing in were making an impact. Jameer Montero being one. The academy was beginning to make an impact. Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie, and even though people criticized Tanner when he did sell Brendan and he did sell McKenzie and then really didn't do anything. He kind of just put into the academy,
yeah,
and he received all that criticism, which I get it, fine. But you see what the end product has now become. What the end product, I say that lightly, the current product has become.
yeah,
You gain the trust of the Union faithful. For the first time ever, the Union had faith in their front office to go out there and make the right moves.
yeah,
You got the Shield, and now you have people like Ua who comes in, and at first people are like, "Oh no, he's not scoring, he's not seeing the field," and then he takes off. Same with Daniel, same with Kai, same with all these players he's brought in. He's assembled this championship winning team, and again, the trust in a front office as a Philadelphia fan is not something that we really have. We have Howie Roseman, we have the Phillies, we have all this kind of stuff. It's, as you've known, been very much hard to trust front office. So to have the faithful Union fans talk so highly of Tanner is a bit strange.
yeah. I think again, as you sort of mentioned, again, Union were the team that really did lack the trust and belief of the team, the fans lacked belief and trust in the organisation and the team for a long time. The relationship between the team and the owner hasn't always been the prettiest. I think
No,
Union fans would probably agree with that a lot. I mean, again, they could the accusations, they perhaps aren't spending enough to compete and things such as that. But again, it's just the way that the Union have always worked.
yeah,
And now you're starting to see again they're starting to spend a bit more money now. We've seen with players like Kelly, who I imagine 4 or 5 years ago, even in 2020 in the MS's back tournament, the Union going out and spending X amount of money to sign the top goal scorer in the Danish Super League would have probably been
yeah.
a fever dream.
It would have been, and it didn't. Like I said, it doesn't seem possible to have what we have now. But it's funny because the Sixers are so known for trust the process, right?
Yeah,
When in reality, the Union are the epitome of trust the process. Here's Coach Curtin. We're going to just trust him to make the system work. Here's Tanner. We're going to make sure that these prospects work. We're just going to trust, trust, trust. And granted, the Union have not won anything besides a supporter shield, which is great, fantastic. But there's obviously bigger
yeah,
goals ahead, But this has been a trust the process type of decade for the Union. And I don't think people really understand that sometimes. They kind of forget it that we really had to grind this last 7 years out and to get
Yeah,
to where we are now. I mean, we put a lot of faith in what this front office and coaching staff wanted to do, and it's a tips tip your hat to them. It's become putting them in the argument for top 3 team in the entire league, which is
yeah,
again not something that we'd ever thought was possible on a
no,
consistent basis. It's now been a consistent basis over the past 3 years.
exactly. I think again, as you said, like nothing you could have imagined in the last 3 4 years. This sort of the way this team be played now, the way it's set up now, and the way how successful it has been. Because I think again, I know we say, oh, the team's only won one Supporter Shield in this sort of 2.5 year span, but again, first ever Supporter Shield. The
Mm.
team made its first ever Eastern Conference Finals. This team got to the CONCACAF Champions League semi-finals and played arguably the biggest team in the continent in Club America.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah,
Like again, those sort of three things. Again, 5 6 years ago, you told your Union fan, or you told yourself 5 6 years ago, Union will do in a 2.5 year span. Like okay, the global pandemic hits, the Union go into some sort of tournament like preseason style tournament to get everything back together, to get some like, attention back on the MLS, and they, you know, they get to the semi-finals of that and put in a really good showing. They win the following year to support that season, the support shield, then go on to do that in the, they then go on to the CONCACAF Champions League, get to the semi-finals and that, and play Club America, which I know to you is such a big team. And the year after that, they get to these. Then that same year, sorry, they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then again this year they're looking to break defensive records. They're looking to win the
yeah,
Sport Shield again, go further. I think many Union fans would have probably laughed in your face. And again,
yeah.
you look at the players that have left as well. Brendan Aronson going on to play for Leeds United. Do you know what I mean? And Mark McKenzie going off to Club Bruges, and it would have been a fever dream for a lot of people.
Yeah, the Club America home game was something that was kind of um I don't know, unforgettable in a lot of ways. But again,
Yeah,
the reason. So for those, if you're wondering why we're going down memory lane so much, it is a weird full circle. I know full circle. I guess changing the guard to see someone like Harris retire. We've seen obviously Ray Gaddis retire and all these players, move on.
yeah,
Ilsinho, who I have on my shirt, Ilsinho kind of move on, and have players like Odada and all these new young prospects coming. It is it is time to kind of look back over these last couple of years and see where we've come from with those players and how we are now. But the Club America match in particular, as people know, my family's from Mexico. I'm Mexican international fan to some extent. Right, I follow them every now and then, and more importantly, Memo Ochoa is a a legendary goalkeeper from Mexico. He's had such amazing performances, and to see him live, not more than 100 yards in front of me, saving a penalty kick in front of for Jamiro was it Jamiro, right? The penalty kick? Yeah.
yeah,
To see they just save the penalty kick. It was like this is our team, the Union. The Union are hosting Club America, a team that my family from Mexico have supported and talked about for decades now.
yeah,
Again, it was one of those moments. A CCL was a great example of how the Union have now had these little tasks, these quests along the way, and they've risen to the occasion every time. Now the next step is the MLS Cup. That
yeah,
is their goal this year. There is either win a cup or failure, in my opinion. We've reached that status. You either bring home, you at least go to the finals, or this was a forgotten year, a lost year, in my
yeah.
opinion. It's simple as that.
No, absolutely agree. I think again, you see the way the team's set up this year. It's not losing games, and when they possibly should be, if they're not winning, they're not losing, which is what you want in your team.
Yeah,
Um, Honestly, it's been an incredible year to sort of, the players that they've signed, and it's exciting to see a player like Odada is starting to, um, sort of shows that they're still looking towards the future while trying to win now, which is so important. And you probably see a lot of teams, as we mentioned, the Eagles before, when they won the Super Bowl, it wasn't, we're going to try and win now, but also going to prepare for the future. It was win now, win now, win now. Do you know what I mean? The off-season sort of signings they made the following year after Super Bowl, Mike Wallace, uh, you know, Halati and Gata, trading from Golden Tate, they're all sort of win now moves in the panic to, especially the Golden Tate trade in the panic to, try and stay on top of the NFL.
yeah,
And it didn't pay off. And again, we sort of saw the 2020 season, sort of the culmination of all of that falling flat in its face. And, that sort of team being so far gone that it, you know, he wasn't going to be able to sort of recover in 1 year or two. So again, we've had sort of a 2 year rebuild. The Eagles now they're starting to look back up. Again, the Union are trying to avoid that mistake there, trying to stay on top. They're trying to get the direct placements in now.
And you think of being a consistent winner. So if you look at teams like the Spurs, the
Yeah,
Warriors, the Patriots, the Yankees, even the certain teams like the Braves back in the '90s, like teams that were consistently dominant, consistently good. They did it for long stretches because they were constantly rebuilding.
yeah,
And the reality of it, a team like the Spurs under Greg Popovich won, I think, was it 5 titles out of the 15, 20 years or whatever that Pop was coaching with Duncan and Robinson combined. Statistically speaking, they've lost more than they've won,
yeah,
right? Same with the Patriots and the Yankees, any other team you can think of, but they were still relevant for such a stretch of time. And for the Union, if they wanted to reach that status, they need to win at least 2 or 3 titles in these next decade or so to be considered a team that really was a dominant force for that 6.5, 7 year span or window, whatever you want to call it. So this is the beginning of this window that's opening up for the Union. And now they
yeah,
have to, as you said, not just use band-aids, consistently find out the right moves at the right times and see where their holes will be and are currently. Um,
yeah,
and again, to be compared to the Spurs and to be put on this pedestal by the big wigs of the Twitter media and in the sports world is exciting, man. Maybe we never will win an MLS Cup. Maybe these next 5 or 6 years will be nothing but disappointments. But tell you what, it's gonna be a hell of a ride.
yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely. I think as you said that, I think like you have you have to try try your best to try and hit. I think again, if the Union had, I mean, Darvo was again, we'll say what it is. He was a bust. He was a bit. The signing wasn't very good, but if the Union had just said, "Okay, we've got a striker here. Darbo's been with us for a few months. We can carry on developing him, whatever," and they just settled, they wouldn't have got Mikel. They wouldn't have got Julian Carranza. Again, seeing someone perhaps like Darvo fail, perhaps made Ernest change his approach a bit in terms of the sort of
Sure.
quality or standard of players he went out for instead of going out for those young South American unknowns that haven't really performed before.
And
Do you know what? We need to get some better because again, we saw
yeah,
the Union last year at key points in the season where they were just down to one striker in Kasper Schmeichel. And again, I look upon Kasper perhaps more fondly than other Union fans because I think his role in this team
yeah,
in that 2 years before he obviously left was so important. I think no Kasper Schmeichel, no support shield. Union aren't where they are now. That Kasper Schmeichel might
of
some
course,
people might say it's unpopular, but I think that's sort of the case. But he wasn't always the most clinical. He wasn't always the best striker. He didn't always play the best, but I think he was so important. But again, it didn't. Perhaps seeing someone like Darvo come in, struggle to actually not only acclimatise to the MLS, but actually just not being anywhere near good enough because clearly he wasn't. If he wasn't even getting to the squad when the Union didn't have a single striker in the team, in the club fit, it perhaps changed altered his transfer strategy to go out and get more proven players in attacking positions or just in general. So again, as I said, you get Julian Kwanzaa, you get Bikedua, two signings again. To say 2-3 years ago, probably unthinkable to sign. And now you signed a guy that cost Inter Miami $15 million and was only replaced by Gonzalo Higuain because he got injured, and Bikedua, who was the top goal scorer of the Danish Super League last year.
and if again, it's hard not to compare it to other local teams. And I'm going to compare him to Howie Roseman. We've seen Howie make the stupidest draft picks. We've seen him pick up these players who don't work out. We've seen him make all these, fumbling moves over this past, decade or so.
Yeah,
And it doesn't feel like he ever learns. Same thing like drafting a linebacker. Like Eagles never really seem to give a crap about linebackers when it's obvious that that's an important position for any NFL team.
yeah,
To your point, Tanner has missed on Orvik and Davo and maybe Bueno and maybe even Riasco, but he's not settling. Just force them into the picture. He's saying, okay, how can I do things differently? He's obviously adjusting, finding different style of players, or at least trying to bring in more talent. And honestly, he's hit more than he's missed by
yeah,
by a long stretch. He's obviously hit more
yeah.
than he's missed. So
I think I was trying
yeah,
to cut
go
you
ahead.
off. I think obviously clearly the biggest position struggled to find a player or find a sort of backup or a replacement, potential replacement is the defensive midfield position.
Yeah,
Orovich failed. Obviously, Bueno's going through a tough time. It looks like that experiment might be coming to an end soon, or that's just settling for him to being like a fringe Union 2 desperation. If we need you in the squad, we'll bring you in. Now, hopefully, Odada can be the guy that can come in and make that spot his and be a solid backup. And if Jose Martinez is injured, or if they've got a centre back crisis, they'll go instead of going, okay, we'll drop Leon in, we'll play Jack McGlynn there, whatever. Or we'll play Quinn Sullivan there.
Yeah.
We'll bring in Richard Odada and we'll play Odada here because we know he can do the job for this team and we know he can do it really well. Hopefully that is the case because, again, I think they really do need to start preparing for this Jose Martinez departure because if it's not going to come this summer, it's going to come in the winter. And if they aren't prepared for it, they could get caught lacking in terms of the midfield depth or, do you know what I mean?
And that's where this team has been a lot of fun to watch, man. Watching every single position have depth this season has been weird, to be honest with you. I mean, I would say the weakest depth position we probably have is at forward. Corey Burke is very much, okay. He's all right. He has his moments. He'll have a goal here or there, but that's the weakest position we have. And if you think about the entire roster from top to bottom, if that's the weakest spot you have, it's not terrible. And as we've seen, Jim Curtin has adjusted this formation of the 4-2-3-1 pretty well. I thought the formation that he put out for the first time, and I think maybe who knows when, to have McGlynn and Jose back there, to have only Carran's up top. I think that was a bit of Curtin also adjusting, saying, hey, listen, I don't really have the best striker depth. Let me now just take one of them out, leave one of them in, and then build around that rather than trying to force Burke up there with somebody else, rather than trying to force Donovan up there with somebody else.
Yeah.
I thought that moment right there, too, though seems, simple or insignificant overall. I think that's a good sign for Curtin that he's, or even the Bedoya move. The fact that Bedoya has been brought back a little bit further to allow the right back to go further up. He mentioned that, I think, in the DC United game. It's these moves that we really haven't seen yet, and this shift from the norm that we really haven't seen yet that has been a very nice surprise. And coincidentally, Dave, they've been winning.
Exactly. I think the future of that left-hand side as well, or that left-sided position, really does depend on what happens with Kai Wagner. Because Kai Wagner goes and they get a left-back in who, if they keep Matt Real or whatever, they get a left-back in that's probably a better defender than they are an attacking player. So like a Regadis type player or whatever. I think the Union probably will perhaps have a more attacking, exploring option there, like a Jack McGlynn or Paxton Harrison or someone like that, who they will have the creative freedom to push up the pitch, as opposed to having Leon Flack, who's more defensive minded, and a player that allows Kai Wagner to go up and do what he does. Again, you mentioned we've seen Bedoya perhaps take that sort of position or role a bit more often in recent weeks, but again, that's allowed his game to improve as well. But I think, I think that sort of, I think the future of the midfield as well, I think it depends a lot on what happens with Kai Wagner in the next couple of transfer windows and who they actually bring in to replace Kai Wagner. Because if you see more attacking-minded player, I could see Leon Flack staying out there. If it's more defensive-minded, sort of left-back and Regadis type player or Alvis Powell type player, you could perhaps see a more attacking-minded player. With I think that's sort of a big sort of area to look at going into the future.
It's huge. I mean, Kai has 11 assists or 10 assists on the year, right? I know he's in double digits of assists. Think about it, double digit goals that he's contributed to off free kicks, off crosses, off whatever. I mean, that's a massive hole offensively to fill. Kai Wagner's top 4 or 5 most important player on that roster every single week. I mean, and even not even just offensively, defensively speaking, he's extraordinary. So you really are missing a big piece when he does leave, which will be eventually. He will eventually see that door. So it's, if you're not going to refill his position with someone in the offensive-minded way, such as Leon Flock, for example, then you better have a midfielder that can produce. You just simple as that. You need to have someone like Jack McGlynn out there who can go out there and score some goals, because you're going to miss or assists to put to get that production back.
Yeah, I think again, you said that's going to be a huge area of concern and something that you're going to have to look towards in the future if you fail to replace Kai Wagner efficiently. Because if you don't get a player that can somewhat at least replicate will do something near to what he can produce. Again, I think he's got 11, 12 assists this year, a couple of goals. You're going to
Unbelievable.
struggle to find a left back as productive as that. And again, do I think Jack McGlynn's a player that's going to, come in and get 20 assists or 15 assists and a few goals? Probably not. I think it's too early in his career to sort of put that responsibility on a player like him. But again, I don't think he is the sort of player. Hopefully we'll find out sooner or later. But I don't think he is the sort of player, to be on the left hand side,
No.
beating players. I think he would probably fit better in the 4-2-3-1 sort of system as a deep line playmaker and getting the ball out wide to other players. So again, maybe losing Kai Wagner could see a change of system, maybe, which then allows you to fit Flark, McGlynn, and Odada into the same system. And, we see Galstad, whoever out there, and you never know. But I think, again, it's an exciting time. But hopefully the Union can keep a hold of these European-bound players for as long as possible.
Yeah, I agree, and it's funny because when you think about it, we really haven't seen much of this team without Kai Wagner. He's been in
Yeah,
almost every single game of these past couple of years, and he's consistent. He's consistently present, and I think when you think of a roster or starting 11 rather without him,
yeah,
you like Bedoya being out. Okay, I can find a replacement. Same with Martinez, Daniel. Maybe Daniel not this year as much. Um, when you had Finley in place, obviously you could kind of switch Glesnes and Elliott out. But Wagner's the one mystery. Who is behind that door? We don't really know. We don't really have ideas who's definitively his backup. Matt
yeah,
Real has been obviously a big person of interest. With some of the fans, but he's been playing so well. We haven't seen his backup ever. So it's going to be one thing that will be a significant move once that like I said, once that shoe drops. But
yeah.
I can't wait. I just can't wait for every single week. Every single week is exciting, man. When are they going to
That's
lose again? Because it doesn't feel like ever sometimes because the way they've been playing over these past
That's yeah.
5 weeks.
That's been an awesome time. And again, as we sort of say, like that MLS back run, back tournament run really kickstarted this team's sort of success going forward in the way perhaps the belief this team had in itself. Again, that was sort of the tournament that Jose Martinez, solidified himself as a starting six in this team. Kai Wagner sort of started to get into his stride and create goals and became more of an influential part of the team as well. So again, it's been an incredible 2.5 years, been an incredible ride, and we're looking forward to seeing not only what the next 3-4 months have in store before the season ends, but what the next 2-3 years have in store as well.
Yeah, it's fun, man. We only have about I think 10 games left, right? 10, 11
Yeah,
games. I mean, the season's coming to a close, and now you're 3 points back from LAFC. The Supporter Shield is right there for the taking, and the Union have a schedule ahead of them that isn't terribly difficult. I mean,
no,
knock on wood, it's not terribly difficult once that the games do come by us. But God, man, we could win the Supporter Shield and make a final appearance. Holy cow, what a year that would be! It really would. I mean, some one for the record books.
no, absolutely. I think it would be again just as a monumental year and something that would perhaps put the Union up on the same sort of level peg in terms of global recognition of LAFC, LA Galaxy, NYCFC, the Red Bulls, Inter Miami, sort of that sort of level. If they can get there and they can do that, and because again you see teams like Portland, Columbus Crew, Seattle Sounders, they win the MS Respect,
Yeah,
they win the MS Cup, they win the Support Shield and things like that. But that sort of success, that fame, that recognition doesn't rarely ever sticks, and this is perhaps something that the Union need to have to perhaps push themselves up into that category. Again, I know we sort of sit here, like you look at those teams that are in maybe big city markets, but even you could probably put Orlando City in there. But again, I'm not saying it's about the Union, becoming on the same level of those teams in terms of a name to sign big players. Just
yeah,
in terms of having that global recognition. So when people discuss the MLS and just don't rattle off the same 5 or 6 teams that they've heard of because they're in the big cities, they actually say the Philadelphia Union is one of those big teams where the Union get put into discussion. They get bigger when people go visit Philadelphia. What are the main things they do? They go sightsee,
yeah.
go watch an Eagles game, go watch a baseball game, go watch a 76ers game. They rarely probably ever go and watch a Union game, so just vote for the team. That's just the case, isn't it? Because Union aren't
Yeah,
seen that as pedestal. If you go and watch an MS game in the USA, you probably go and watch those same 5 or 6 teams.
right,
Game
right.
for the Union, once they actually get to an MS, once they win an MLS Cup, the aim there after that is to solidify themselves up in that big 5 or 6 team category where they are the national representation or the global representation of the league, as opposed to being a big name amongst MLS circles.
Listen, winning fixes everything, and you want a big name, a big international signing. You start winning cups, you start winning shields. It doesn't matter if you're in Chester. You're going to get attention from players who want to play for Philadelphia, who want to
Yeah,
play for Coach Curtin, and or for Tanner, because they trust that Tanner's going to build around them. So winning an MLS Cup would be something that would be massive for the future. Which again,
yeah,
even just the academy, people wanted to go to the academy even more than they already do. It's man, it's fun. Like I said, this whole walk down memory lane, this whole thinking of the future because of the moves with Odada and Harris has been, it's just very eye opening when you really
yeah.
take a step back and look at it.
No, exactly. I think, as you said, it's sort of like a blast from the past, looking back at what the team was, and now again, Adada is sort of a look into the future of what this team can become or what is becoming.
Yep.
So again, I think it's been a good pod, to look back and look forward as well. I mean, again, as I've sort of said, the biggest aim for the union now was to, after hopefully getting that MLS Cup, whether it's this year, next year, is to then put themselves up in the same sort of name brand names of Inter Miami, LAFC, LA Galaxy. Because once you're there, it doesn't matter about some big players. If the union never sign big players, that's fair enough. That doesn't matter. It's about being up alongside those teams, having that stature, and being a, a flag waver for the MLS on a global scale as
Yeah.
opposed to a national and continental scale.
100%. It's all about growth, man. It's all about
Yeah,
growth. But uh, speaking of growth, the Union are trying to grow their lead on the Eastern Conference. I know this Saturday they play against Cincinnati. Like I said, Haris Medunjanin's last MLS game against his former club.
yeah,
Dave, I believe I'm covering that match, right?
yep. I'm away for a week now.
Yes. That's right. You're gonna be gone for a week. So
Yeah,
this show will release on Friday. I'll probably get it out Friday morning or Friday afternoon at some point. Um, but yeah, it'll be 7:30. The Union have won 5 straight games. They've been rolling. They are the fourth highest scoring team in the league. They are the best
yeah,
team in the league in goals allowed in terms of defensive standpoint. So
yeah.
they're playing great, and
Also,
it's been nice. It's been, trust me, the last 2 years covering this team have been I've been very
awesome.
fortunate. Well, yeah, it's been awesome. Very fortunate to cover a team that has been as on the rise as the Union have been.
Yeah, no, actually, I think it's been awesome. Just see the development, the rise of this team, and again, it's been incredible. To actually be a part of the journey of covering the team on a weekly basis,
Yeah,
covering matches, being able to sit there and listen to Jim Curtin speak to the press and give his opinions and things. It's been an incredible journey. And we're, again, with the podcast as well, being able to actually voice out what we believe, what we think, and to actually put it out there. It's been an incredible journey.
absolutely, man. All right, guys. Well, this concludes our Tuesday pre-recorded show. I'll release it Friday afternoon, and go Union.
Go Union, Doop.